Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. If you enjoy these videos, do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel right here at Watchbox Reviews. I'd really appreciate it, and then I'd be able to send videos like this to your inbox as soon as tomorrow morning. Now, if you like the watch, you can see it and 1,700 of its pre-owned friends on our website, thewatchbox.com. Buy, trade, and sell luxury pre-owned watches on thewatchbox.com. I will also say that as a current collection watch, if you like this one and we haven't got it pre-owned by the time you check our site, give my buddy Claudio at our Walnut Street Boutique a call and he will be able to hook you up. Okay, today we are discussing the 2018 Breitling Navitimer 8 B01 Chronograph 43, one of the in-house caliber Navitimer 8 chronographs, a timepiece that, quite frankly, looks and wears like a premium piece, though many will dispute its Navitimer status by virtue of its lack of a calculator bezel. Let's talk about how it fits and feels, and then we'll get into that deeper. Okay, on my wrist, 16 centimeters in circumference, oval in profile. You can see it sits well, though 43 millimeters in diameter, not including chronograph pushers and crown. The watch does have a relatively slim profile at 14.3 millimeters with a little bit of a slope to the edge of its bezel, so it should slide underneath not just most jackets, but also most dress cuff sleeves beneath. Lug-to-lug, it's a very reasonable 50.7, which means that I think it'll wear well on a wrist as small as about 14 to 14.5 centimeters circumference. If your wrist is more oval than round, then you can count on it fitting on the lower end of that size scale. Breitling has done a good job under Georges Kern of trying to pare down the lugs of its larger watches. Of course, Georges Kern, former IWC CEO, came over with the private equity ownership when Breitling was sold last year, remaking the brand in his image, and better fit is part of that. You can see that the strap is upscale. Alligator leather, medium rectangular scales, a contrasting stitch with a little bit of simulated patina off-white coloration to it. You can see a very thin folded edge, or I should say sheer edge, because you can see both of the layers of the construction. Nicely executed calfskin on the underside and a Breitling pin buckle that has a handsome little bit of a fluted flare at its end that parallels the design of the lugs themselves. Consistent design from part to part. I'm a fan. Okay, let's talk about the case finish. Let's get a little bit closer and give ourselves some more light too. Okay, now you can see it's mostly satin finish on the case flank. The case flank being linear brushed with a little bit of a polish about the bevel of the lugs and polish about the edge of the bevel, as well as on chronograph pushers and crown with the new Breitling wingless logo. The bezel, about that bezel, okay, of course Navitimers usually, by tradition, have had a circular slide rule bezel. Not always. They haven't always been chronographs, and they haven't always been mechanical watches. That said, if you take this watch on its own terms and think of it as the new Chronomat, it's spectacular. And it does feature a rotating bezel. So if you just want to call this the Chronomat 8, I'm sure Georges Kern will not mind if you pick it up all the same. I happen to like this watch. I just think that it's up against it by being called a Navitimer. Line up the index with the minute hand, and you can see that you really have to eyeball and estimate. I would say timing quarters is probably the limit of precision without any secondary calibrations short of the index itself. Now you will note that if you want to time something precisely, you can just use the chronograph. The watch has a tri-register chronograph featuring tone-on-tone invert panda coloration, because tone-on-tone is the new Breitling chronograph cue for in-house caliber. Sunburst black base, you can see that it is fully luminescent. There will be a lume shot at the end, and inboard of that somewhat controversial but very slick turning bezel, there is a aviator's railroad track, and that's what I'm going to describe it as, because the calibration as well as the dial design and the bezel design comes from cockpit instruments designed for the flight deck of 1930s aircraft created by Breitling's 8 Aviation division during the 1930s. So the watch is inspired by Breitling's heritage, just not necessarily wrist watches, more like flight deck instruments, and you can see that aesthetic. The Breitling logo now shorn of its wings, still an applied yellow gold B, and you'll note that the tone-on-tone registers distinguish between constant seconds at 9 o'clock and chronograph minutes as well as hours, so you can easily focus on those and read them precisely, regardless of the bezel's calibration. A date with a monotone disc at 4:30, and there is a quick set for it. The watch as a whole is 100 meters water resistant thanks to the screw-down crown, And the movement inside is Breitling's own. Since 2009, the B01 caliber, rarely seen. The new regime seems to be proud of the movement, and it should be. It's technically adept and good looking for a mostly machine-made and machine-finished caliber. So I'm happy to be able to see it. Still 100 meters water resistant, and a chronometer, as you can see on both the rotor as well as the case back itself. Vertical clutch with the column wheel. You can see as I cycle the functions, the column wheel, its levers and horns index. It is a very crisp feel. The column wheel making for slick actuation, and the vertical clutch allowing you to start the chronograph without any jump to the seconds hand or stagger as it operates. You'll also find that because it is a vertical clutch, you can just leave the chronograph running with no additional wear, tear, or shortened maintenance interval because it doesn't have the meshing teeth of a lateral clutch. So if you prefer center seconds, just leave the chronograph running. The automatic winding energizes a 70-hour power reserve, and you can see the watch beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour. It is a 47 joule movement, so rather deluxe even by the standards of contemporary chronometer grade calibers. And you'll note this one can be very precisely adjusted because it actually uses Edachron for micro regulation of rate as well as beat error. Very impressive, and that's a nice refinement to have. This is a handsome and accomplished watch. It's always going to be a challenge to view it as a Navitimer, but as a wonderful modern Breitling chronometer chronograph, it's an unqualified success on that count. Elegant and, in my opinion, timeless. I think this particular steel invert panda dial is going to be the one that stands the test of time. The Navitimer 8 Chronograph 43 black steel is the most striking of the new collection, and of course the variant of this watch with the blue dial might be the most voguish circa 2018, but I think 20 years from now this will be the one everyone wants when we look to buy vintage Breitling Navitimer 8. See it, make it yours on thewatchbox.com. And I am back with the Breitling Navitimer 8 B01 Chronograph 43. As you can see, robustly loomed. This one has absolutely no trouble flexing its muscles when the light goes down. You'll also note that the indices outboard of the luminescent Arabic numerals create a handsome mirrored effect against the polished inner bezel, nicely expanding the watch visually. A handsome and very legible light, dark, land and sea sports watch. You can see it, make it yours on the Watchbox.